Hey everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row. I am Austin Ward. That's Jeremy Birmingham. This is his Christmas. That's Spencer Holbrook. It's a holiday for him as well. I'm not sure which one, but he's also somebody who talks stuff all the time, presented by Byers Auto. I'm not sure what to call this, if it's a practice report, if it's a rapid reaction to a huge day, or if it's just a talking stuff. It probably can't be that because I'm not allowed to host that, right, Berm?
You're allowed to do whatever you want, Austin. I'm willing to share. I think that no matter what we call it, talking reaction, rapid stuff, practice stuff, whatever. There's a lot going on. I mean, it's
the stuff report.
There's so much stuff to report upon. Some of it is worth talking about. Other is worth reporting about. So I don't know. I mean, whatever we want. That's the beauty of being on the internet, man. We can just do whatever.
Okay, it's a little bit crazy and stressful to have. We're just reporting about it and talking about it and throwing out the stuff. I can only imagine what it's like for Ryan Day and that coaching staff to have the early signing period and National Signing Day start in the middle of Big Ten Championship Week. We'll get back to talking about the current Buckeyes and the college football playoff, tomorrow and Friday and Saturday. But this is a huge day for the future. It's all been complicated, not just because it was Big Ten Championship Week, Berm, but the last dating back to March, and this whole cycle has been bizarre.
I remember sitting in Ryan Day's office last December when Ohio State signed the 2020 class, and we did the Bermanology episode with him there. He was talking about the whirlwind 10 days that he had after the Big Ten Championship game leading up to signing day and being at all these different award ceremonies and the Heisman, and how he basically went from plane to plane to plane to be able to be in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on the morning of signing day. And then I contrast that with what the Buckeyes coaches have done this year, which is sit on their butts and sit on Zoom calls and sit on Zoom calls like we're doing, and basically talking nonstop. I mean, it's been a weird year, obviously, but the Buckeyes are one of the best recruiting programs in the country. They have the second-ranked class in the nation. And then there's these weird little ways, guys, that I feel like this year actually benefited them because they were able to really connect with kids in a different way. There's sort of an adage that I've heard coaches talk about that one visit is worth like 10 phone calls. So and in this cycle, there's no visit. So there's like been 1,000 phone calls. So you're basically getting 100 visits because every one of these calls is a mini visit to kind of look into the window of who you're dealing with. And I talked to Ryan Day about it, and he basically said that, it's almost like they were oversharing in this cycle. And maybe that's why they felt so comfortable with the 21 kids that they signed on Wednesday morning, despite the fact that there's a number of them they haven't really ever gotten to know in person.
Yeah, Mark Pantoni talked about this as well, Spencer, that there was a lot that Ohio State could learn by the way that they used Zoom and FaceTime. Not that they weren't already FaceTiming and communicating when allowed in the past, but there's probably a number of elements that they will use from this year, carry them forward, even though they would like to get back to normal and go do in-person evaluations, have camps, get on the road in December. Maybe some of that stuff they won't do to quite the extent as before, but there's a number of things that they use since March that they will definitely keep in the arsenal moving forward.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me that he brought up the fact that you don't have to do an unofficial visits as often anymore because they now know that they can recruit guys on Zoom, and it's pretty effective because they just signed the second best class in America basically through Zoom. And so when you got guys who might not be able to swing the cash to come for an unofficial visit, they can only come on that official visit. Well, now you can do that on Zoom, and you can connect with these guys in ways that you probably could have before, but you didn't really know about or understand or fully take advantage of. Now all of that's at your disposal, no matter whether they have the money to come on an unofficial visit, they have the time, resources, or not. You can still have guys on your campus to come on an unofficial visit. And I think that's a big takeaway for these guys from just hearing from them for an hour today.
I agree. I don't mean to cut you off, but there's some things like, the athletic facilities at Ohio State that you're only really going to be able to get a feel for the grandiosity of them in person. Okay. Like you're not only going to get an opportunity to really understand everything that's available to you at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center if you're on campus. In the future, that's not going to be any different. But where you do see, I think, a real opportunity here is like the Fisher School of Business, for example. These advisors and administrators of the other parts of the school have a much greater opportunity now to connect with kids than they ever did before. And I think that we saw that play out in the recruitment of Emeka Abuka, of Donovan Jackson, of Travion Henderson. All these kids got a chance to really connect with other parts of Ohio State as an entity, not just Ohio State as a football program. That really helped them feel comfortable, because when you get to campus, it is 2020. Even if it wasn't for COVID-19, a lot of these kids now are taking classes in more of a virtual setting. And so you're starting to understand the value of this. And Ohio State is always ahead of the curve when it comes to recruiting and updating what they're doing to match, the new standards. And I'm not surprised to hear Mark Pantoni say that at all. And I thought the most interesting thing he said the entire day was the last thing he said was that because of the fact that they've had less evaluation of tape to do, he's actually been turning into a quasi evaluator of other teams. And with the free transfer market that's going to be opening up soon, the one free transfer, college football is changing as we know it. And Mark Pantoni's entire job is potentially going to change as he now becomes a guy that's almost like the head of a scouting agency inside of Ohio State.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if they've got the ability to add more staffers for him, because if you're going to scout every conference, or obviously you're already looking at every team in the Big Ten, you'd know what you're dealing with there. But if you're going to scour the entire country for potential fits, that's going to take more people. That's a conversation for Mark Pantoni for another day. Berm, when you look at this class, what is the most important part of it? What's the number one takeaway now that the signatures are in?
The takeaway for me is just how, in a year that could have been absolutely haywire, Ohio State had every single member of its class signed by 11 a.m. There was no drama leading up to signing day. They had 2 decommitments in the entire cycle. One of them from Tumije Adeleye, that when he committed, we basically were like, okay, there's only a matter of time till this kid decommits. Not because he didn't like Ohio State, but just because it seemed like he was using the opportunity to commit to Ohio State to kind of put some focus back on him. Fine, whatever. I think the Buckeyes will learn a lesson from that in the future. The only other decommitment is from Davonte Smith, a cornerback in the state of Ohio who signed with Alabama. And you don't want to lose anyone ever, especially an in-state kid, but they ended up replacing him with Jordan Hancock, who was their top target at cornerback the entire process, and flipping him from Clemson. So you just sort of see that. But ultimately, it's the bounce back of Tony Alford, I think, is the one thing that is really going to be remembered about the 21 cycle. And then, in my mind, the least talked about 5-star quarterback in the history of maybe college football recruiting is Kyle Mccord. I mean, the kid's been committed for 18 months and more than any quarterback in the country maybe has an opportunity to walk in and compete for a starting job at Ohio freaking State of all places. And people are just sort of ho-hum. He's just another guy. And Kyle Mccord is not just another guy. Like, he is a really good quarterback. Really good.
Well, I mean, you know how this works. He's been committed for 18 months and never flirted, thought about leaving. You've got periodic updates and written about it and had him on Birminology multiple times, and never really, even as Quinn Ewers comes in or CJ Stroud and Jack Miller are both in their freshman years and like unwavering. I think that's one of the most fascinating parts of this. Maybe it's just because I'm not as ingrained and into it, the recruiting beat every day, 12 months out of the year, like you two are. But, and I guess that makes me a little bit of a basic guy that I focus on the quarterbacks only. But if you're going to pin down the trajectory of this program, it starts at the most important position. If you're going to win a national championship, you have to have an elite quarterback. And Justin Fields is not going to be around in the spring. I know that Ryan Day doesn't want to talk about, the future beyond Saturday, beyond the college football playoff, but that's real. And CJ Stroud and Jack Miller did not get normal freshman years. So does that help Kyle Mccord? It probably will. He didn't get everything that those two got, but that is truly a fascinating dynamic that's going to be, that competition with 3 guys basically starting at almost the same spot in March. You wonder if Ohio State will need to supplement that with potentially a graduate transfer. That's a conversation for later. Once Justin Fields actually makes his decision that we all expect. But, that's for me, you look at Kyle Mccord, the situation with Stroud and Jack Miller, I'm already looking forward to seeing them compete. I hope it's a normal spring football, because that is going to be a truly, truly incredible thing to watch transpire, because you're not going to keep them all. At some point, somebody's going to have to leave. Only one of them can play. And how is this race going to shake out? Because you're also not going to win a national championship without somebody playing at a high level.
Yeah, and you're not going to win a national championship if you have a quarterback that you're not completely confident in. And I think that was I think you asked him about it, Austin. Ryan Day came out and said, we're not sure. He's not 100% confident yet, because he's not going to have a guy that's played before. And so Kyle McCord steps into a situation where it is truly an open battle, as compared to when CJ Stroud and Jack Miller both signed. We thought one of them would eventually have a leg up, but it looks like that's not going to be the case. And so the next few months are going to be pivotal for them. It's going to be pivotal for Kyle McCord to get off on the right foot when he gets to Ohio State. I hope they have a true spring practice session, just so we can see this unfold and have an idea of what's going to happen going into the fall. Because if you don't, then you start to scratch your head and wonder what the trajectory of the program is for next year in particular, because you just don't know what you've got at quarterback.
Here's something I find really interesting about Kyle McCord. Initially, in the middle of all the early enrollment plans, and we're talking 14, maybe 15 guys early enrolling from this class, and Kyle had a couple guys that he was planning on rooming with. And I heard on Wednesday morning that he's changing his rooming assignment and is now going to room with Marvin Harrison, Jaden Ballard, and hopefully Emeka Ibuka if he enrolls early. So not only is he enrolling early, but he's enrolling and rooming with the 3 wide receivers in the class, and all of which are very similar personality-wise to Kyle, very low-key. These are kids that are going to just hit the books, read the playbook, learn the playbook. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how much extra work he gets in just by having those guys as his roommates at the start of the process. So I think that's going to be really a cool little twist to what Kyle's done. He changed it on the fly in this last week because he realized, hey, I'm going to be there to focus on being quarterback and learning the position. Ohio State wants to be quarterback and Kyle McCord is sort of the next step in that. I compared him to Dwayne Haskins in my piece on signing day morning, and I think that big body, strong arm kid who's just going to stand in the pocket and deliver darts. Watch his senior season state championship game, the 3rd state championship he won at St. Joe's Prep, and you will see a type of arm talent that is rare anywhere, and it's even rare at Ohio State.
It's really pretty amazing how this has become the quarterback destination. I know that they're not alone. I mean, Oklahoma and what Lincoln Riley's done, they signed a 5-star this cycle as well. But you look at this collection of talent and the way that people are continuing to line up, not just with Jack Miller and CJ Stroud, but Kyle McCord and then Quinn Ewers next year. Again, if you're going to get 4 top-flight passers, they might wind up finishing their career elsewhere. But everybody wants to at least start their development that way, or a number of them do. And there's a big line of quarterbacks that want that opportunity. And even if you don't have them for 4 or 5 years or 3 years, Ohio State's still reaping the benefit of that Joe Burrow situation in the way that helped propel him to the next level. And that's okay too. I mean, I know that a lot has been made about that Ohio State let one get away, as if Dwayne Haskins wasn't setting school passing records in 2018 under Ryan Day, but that's neither here nor there. That's a lot of quarterback conversation. Your superlatives that'll come out on Friday, Berm will dive into this, but who's the most underrated member of this class, you think?
I talked about this with Spencer on Talking Stuff on Tuesday, but I think it might be Jansen Dunn, the defensive back from Bowling Green, Kentucky. At 6'2" and 205 pounds, and he's a 4.5 guy, has a 40-inch vertical, really long arms, really athletic, explosive. He's one of the 2 defensive backs that are enrolling early, and I think that he's going to have an opportunity to make some hay. And I personally love Michael Hall at defensive tackle at 6'3", 290 pounds. As I've written and said it, I was told he's the best defensive tackle in Ohio in the last 10 years. And you watch his tape, you can see it. He has really got quick hands, quick feet, and I think he's going to contribute as a freshman, even though he's not enrolling early. There's so many stars in this class that it's hard to find what I would call a sleeper. But I think those 2 are the guys that I would think maybe are overlooked heading into next year. And then down the road, Ryan Day hit on it a little bit earlier, but I think Zen Michalski has the potential to be something really unique down the road at Ohio State. And I compared him to Jack Mewhort, and I think that sort of ability and athleticism is really unique in an offensive lineman.
Spencer, what are you looking forward to most when you see these guys enroll early?
I want to see these running backs. I want to see those two come in and compete right away. I know that's kind of a stacked room. It's kind of a cop-out for me to say it because they have two of the top 6 guys at the position in the entire country. But when you bring in 2 guys like that who are best friends off the field and they're going to be competing for early playing time on the field, you just wonder how that dynamic is going to play out, what the carries are going to look like next year with Trey Sermon moving on and Master T kind of taking the reins if he chooses to. I think that's going to be a really interesting dynamic, and I'm really excited to watch those two get to work because I think they both have the potential to really make an impact early.
Those two are rooming together as well, and not that you needed a lot of intrigue, but they are going to be roommates at Ohio State, and they are different. The comparisons for them were Ezekiel Elliott and Curtis Samuel. So I guess if you can have them in the backfield anywhere near the same time, that seems pretty good.
Seems like a little bit of an understatement.
And I want to be clear, I did outsource opinions on these comparisons. So it wasn't just my own feeling. So, to underline those a little bit.
That was my favorite part of what you did on the signing day coverage, Berm. You did a fantastic job, as you always do, the best in the business when it comes to this. And now you get to dive right into the next cycle. It's already well underway.
Can't wait. I want a little tease here, and you'll see it in a few hours on YouTube and on Lettermen Row. But I did have a chance to do a talk with Ryan Day individually after he met with the media today. And that'll be a Berminology episode coming up in 2 hours. And one thing he mentioned, and we were talking about Emeka Egbuka and the decision to choose the class of Ohio State when you know that there's 5 other 5-star receivers in the room with you. And I'm paraphrasing here, but Ryan Day said, well, the good thing is we're getting them next year too. All you have to do is look. Like he's basically saying if these kids don't want to compete, they're not going to come to Ohio State. And when they're talking, and the buzzword all day and all year has been culture, culture, culture. And that is pretty much the bottom line. If you're not willing to come to compete and fight against the best of the best every single day, then you're not going to go to Ohio State. And what Ryan said on our call was that essentially, if they choose not to, then we probably didn't want them anyway. And that sounds like a cop out, and I understand. But big picture, if these kids are even slightly reluctant to make that decision because of the fact that there's other talent in Columbus, then the Buckeyes are getting an easy out with them going elsewhere. So it's a good time to be an Ohio State fan for those of you out there who are. For those of you who are hate watching us, I'm sorry.
It's a tough situation, especially if you're around the rest of the Big Ten, because Buckeyes are going for 4 in a row on Saturday. I have a very hard time seeing how that streak is going to end the way that this stockpile of talent continues, certainly compared to the rest of the league. This has been some rapid stuff. It's brought to you by Byers Auto. Nice of Jeremy Birmingham to let me hop in here on National Signing Day as a recruiting outsider a little bit, and Spencer Holbrook as well. These guys talk stuff all year round. They do a great job. Certainly got to follow them for all that information, and you can continue to follow Lettermen Row for full coverage of the Buckeyes ahead of Saturday's Big Ten Championship. Stay with us at lettermenrow.com.